ourselves a new deck on our journey to 1000, and that deck is the B-roll playing cards. So hopefully this one will be pretty cool. Anyway, I hope your day has been well, and you're ready to relax, play some Solitaire, as we continue our journey to 1000. Interesting deck so far. Anyway, I'm excited. It has been a long day for me, and I know I'm ready to check out and play some cards right now with you. My goodness. So let's shuffle up our deck 4 times and get our first game of the night underway. I was honestly hoping this deck would be a little more B-roll type incorporations with the deck, a little more cinematic, I guess, in a way. Anyway, let's not be too judgmental just yet as we deal out our first game of the night. Let's see what we will be working with to start. Double 4s already. And there we go. Not too much to work with to start, but there is promise and potential looming for us. So let's see if we can get ourselves a red 8 or a black queen to do some heavy lifting, as we already have several plays out early and a couple more added. Tonight I am up much later than I typically would like. I just watched the, I think, Nickelodeon documentary video series about Dan Schneider, and I didn't expect to want to watch it as much as I did. So we'll just talk about that, since it is like a little bit of a connection B-roll and some negativity, I guess, or negatives, I should say. Anyway, this looks to be a tough start. Doesn't look like we'll make it out, really, but you never know. There might be one card that wants to change that all, but in this first game, that card will elude us. So for now, there's nowhere for that queen. 4, 9, 5, 5 once again, and lastly, a 10. Alright, so as we clean up, let's talk a little bit about Nickelodeon. So for those of you who don't know about Nickelodeon, let's learn a bit together, as already we had Double Kings. And for those of you who've grown up with it, let's share some thoughts together. Double 6s, double queens, triple queens, and triple kings with triple 8s and double 10s. Lots of nasty. Let's do a casino shuffle to hopefully change our luck. Okay. So, I've said this before in a couple other videos, but I was never a Disney Channel kid. I never watched any of those shows or really movies. I liked watching television that was based more on I guess there was a bit of real life television or in-person television on Disney Channel. But I grew up with the Amanda Show. That was one show I remember watching very, very early on that I quite enjoyed as a young one. And that would develop into Drake and Josh, a little bit of Zoe 101, Ned's Declassified, and The Bunch. And I always noticed at the end of a show or episode, there would always be this thing called Schneider's Bakery, or Schneider's Oven, one of those two. And it was this cartoon oven. And I just found out a lot of the shows I liked so happened to be one of this man's shows. And it's kind of weird. I pretty much watched all of his shows and enjoyed them in some way, for some reason. Or I should say most, not all. Given the time frame. And watching this docu-series, or whatever you so call it, was actually kind of interesting. Because while watching these videos, even in a young, undeveloped mind, I knew things were a bit funky and unusual. And when I grew older, that was the main turn-off to why I stopped watching those shows. It's very obvious when you're older, and even if you're younger to a bit, but you think, whatever. They're my age, so it's just kind of normal, I guess. I don't know. But just looking at it's just very off-putting and unsettling. And once again, triple aces. And I had no idea how much that man Dan Schneider produced for Nickelodeon. Pretty much all of their popular shows, the shows I grew up watching, had that little bit of funk to it. And not the good type of funk. Just some funkiness. And it was a bit weird. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to focus on negativity, really. So, if you've seen Nickelodeon shows before, check it out. You might enjoy it, maybe not. Of course, there's gonna be some stuff that's gonna make some people uncomfortable, but you know what? You have to go through some uncomfortable things to learn sometimes, or not. It's up to you, honestly. Honestly, I don't think it's much to learn from. I think it's more of a morbid curiosity type thing, as we have our first fat stack. My bad. But give it a watch if you've seen that stuff or watched any of those shows, as aforementioned. As we have ourselves a decent game, which hopefully will lead to something greater. As now, we have our second fat stack of the night. I hope we can add a win to our total with this one. Feels like we've been having lots of rough outcomes recently. So double fat stacks, another 9 to play. Place down another king. And another king. Oh wow, that's unfortunate. So that's it for this second game at the moment, as there's nowhere for that 7, 8, or 6. We do have some room to work with, but not enough because there's still no play left on the field. So unfortunately, on to game number 3. Alright, let's go back to a different note, or go to a different note. So for myself, I always thought film was kind of, what's the best way to put this? I should say when I was younger meaning before the age of 14, I thought filmography, I think is what you call it, was a little bit boring or dull, silly even. And then the more I kind of learn about it passively while doing this channel and thinking about its future, I've come to realize I find it's actually very fun. It could be very interesting and intriguing. And I never would expect myself to be one that enjoys analyzing the way things are shot, filmed, color tones, angles, that type of stuff. It's very interesting. And I wonder if you've ever had or shared that same sentiment where film is being seen as something a little silly. Yet, there are elements that make things quite not. I'm trying to think of a word that best describes it. Explorative, I think, would be fitting, I guess. Because for so long, I knew in a movie for myself, if it had a very good soundtrack, it would make the movie better even if it sucked. If you want an example of that, watch Star Wars without the soundtrack, Indiana Jones. Pretty much any good movie, you'll notice, has a very good soundtrack. And you could probably pinpoint the movie just by the soundtrack. And not too often, through my experiences, would I be able to identify a movie just from, let's say, a specific shot that has nothing to do with the movie. I guess that's more of a tone setter. The first thing that came to mind was, let's see if I could think of anything on the spot, is what was going on in my head when I thought Titanic. I think we could all pretty much imagine Titanic in our heads. And when I think about Titanic, I think about Jack and Rose on the edge of the ship, looking over the sunset, spitting over the edge, bonding that way as we have 444s and 888s. How lucky are we? And that's the main picture I think of when I think of Titanic. Nothing too unique, nothing too extraordinary, just simplicity with some CGI right there. I think. Let's think of a little more obscure movie. Okay, let's go recent, so hopefully one that most of us have seen. Think about Oppenheimer. What do you think about? What picture comes in your mind when you think of Oppenheimer? I think this one could be a little bit everywhere. But I think for a lot of us, as that's the end of game number 3, we might imagine the pits of the test site sunglasses and eye protection as the bomb detonates. I think that's a pretty vivid one. But I think a good thing about Oppenheimer is that, yes, there is a bit of... It's not... I don't know, it's kind of tough to explain, but a lot of shots aren't particularly focused on the settings, but a lot of shots are focused on something that matters. So there are lots of scenes in that movie where you could probably piece together in your head the entire 3-hour film from start to finish. From exploring Europe as a young student to then finding his own in Berkeley, and just little visual obscurities, rallies, lots of things stand out. I don't know. It's kind of fun recreating a film in your head or explaining it. Let me think of a relaxing movie that I remember. Alright, here's a movie I used to fall asleep to a bit that I think a fair chunk of you would know. So I would like to put on movies before falling asleep on my PlayStation, and I'd put the DVD in and let it play, and typically if I were falling asleep, I'd like a movie that's long, not too loud, but has a point in the movie where it's heavily fixated on nighttime. And that movie for me was Aladdin. Since after the first, I think about 50%, there is a good chunk where there is a lot of dialogue with Aladdin and Princess Jasmine during nighttime. And the color scheme of just how simple everything appeared was a very calming visual for me. I'm honestly surprised I can't think of anything else off the top of my head that I used to fall asleep to that was similar to that. You know what? Let's wait. Just because we need a Black King. Game 4, by the way. And you know what? I just realized we haven't even done our deck reading just yet. So, let's do that now. So the back design is actually quite neat. I like it. Not too complicated, but still enough effort to show that there is something distinct, fitting to the theme of the deck, obviously. Front design, I'm not gonna lie, a bit lacking. There were so many avenues they could have gone with this deck, but it's just kind of a boring, simple design in a sense that just leaves you wanting more. The feel of the cards is decent, not anything great, but not anything bad. So, I think, surprisingly, there's nothing great, nothing bad, nothing noteworthy. I think we're gonna have to give it like a 6 or a 6.5, just by the reason of nothing distinct. design, but that's just about it. As there's nowhere for that 9, oh, there is somewhere for that king. Then a queen. But we are left with a 9 and 8. Quadruple queens left on the field. And with that, my friend, we could play that, but it would not lead to anything. As we move on to our final game of the night. And my goodness, am I tired, and I hope you are too. It's been a while since I've had one of those, that's just nasty, those very tired rambles where I just seem not to shut up. Honestly, I enjoy it quite a bit because it makes me feel like I'm just talking to you, not worrying about anything else. Just have the random stream of thought that leads from somewhere to another. This casino shuffle actually might put me to sleep. Oh, and do you know what I realized? So I was just going in my head, thinking about popular movies, where you pretty much know the soundtrack, or the score, and one, I don't have any idea at the moment of what the score sounds like, or what the music sounds like really, is Scarface. Now I bet you weren't expecting to hear Scarface tonight. It's a good movie, but I actually have no idea what the soundtrack is. The Titanic. In Titanic, I should say. I'm pretty sure most of us would think of My Heart Will Go On, or the violins playing as the ship sinks. Spoiler, if you didn't know, back in like the 1910s, the Titanic sunk, so I hope that doesn't spoil the movie for you. Shouldn't come much as a shocker, honestly. Oh, it's so hard to tell when I'm tired, when I'm joking. At least it feels like. Let's bring this 3 back for this 2. Place down this king. And double kings as we start our final game of the night. I guess the last thing we'll touch on tonight is favorite types of movies to watch. Now it's easy for myself to get into a movie that could just be more for the audio than the visuals. For example, like 2001 Space Odyssey. I guess the visuals apply there too, actually. But what's a movie that you enjoy that's just so visually pleasing for whatever reason? Or is, in a sense, visual eye candy? Now, I'm a little bit sadistic when it comes to that. The movie that comes to mind for me is one of my favorites, as that's the end of our night, which is Return of the Living Dead. Such a fun movie. I think horror movies have so much potential when done right, and that one was done right. As that's the end of our night, nowhere for the 6-jack, 3-10, 8-4-9, or any play left on the field. So a promising start is washed away with what can only be assumed or credited to the cards left until we meet again, my friend, have yourself a relaxing remainder of your night.